alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Mujahid. Jazakumullah khairan for accepting our invitation, giving us the opportunity to ask you and come to converse with you.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I really appreciate it, Habib, for inviting me to give me this opportunity to speak about my experience as a Muslim here in the United States.
Let's start with your upbringing. Where did you grow up? How was the family life when you grew up?
I grew up in Washington, D.C. You know, I was born, my name originally, the name that my parents gave me was Keith Darnell Pendergast Jr. So my father's name was also Keith. So I grew up in a household in the inner city, you know, in the 80s and the 90s. I was born in 1976. So I grew up during the 80s and the 90s. And during that time, it was a very rough environment in Washington, D.C. during that time. So I saw a lot, heard a lot, experienced a lot growing up, you know, in the inner city of Washington, D.C. During the 80s and the 90s. Both my parents were together, my mother and my father, and I had three brothers. And my father was very influential in my life, you know. And during that time, not many African Americans had their father with them in the home, but my father was there. My uncle, his brother was there, not living with us, but also present in our lives. My grandfather and my grandparents also had a very good influence on me coming up. Yeah, and I was the oldest of three brothers. Yes.
So what were some lessons that your father imprinted on you?
Well, my father was very serious about studying, you know, studying, get your education, stay in school, benefit while you have the opportunity. He said, I don't want you to end up how I am, you know. I had opportunities, but I didn't take advantage of those opportunities. I didn't really like school. Even though I had the opportunity to go and study in the university, and he got a scholarship to go to Wake Forest University, but he chose not to do that. So he told me I regretted that. So he said, the thing that I want you to do is stay in school and get your education so you can live a better life. Because we grew up in the projects of Washington, D.C. So he said, I don't want you to live the same kind of life that I'm living. Even though as a young kid, I heard him, but I didn't listen. You know, I didn't listen. Yeah, it was too many distractions and too many things to keep you away from, you know, studying. You know, if you allow that. Yeah. Even though there were some kids that were studious, but many of us at that time we weren't. We were more into the latest styles, the music, sports. All of those things other than trying to better ourselves. And that was the problem in the inner city at that time. You know, we had too many things to distract us.
Maybe you being the oldest, was he hard on you?
He was actually, my father wasn't a very hard person or very, he was actually kind of lenient, you know. My mother was the one that was more strict, but my father, he was kind of lenient towards us. As having three boys, he was very lenient with us. But my mother, she was the one that tried to make us sure we were doing our homework and make sure we were staying in school. But my father, even though he gave me that advice, he didn't follow up on it the way my mother did. Yeah.
How did you hear about Islam? What was your first interaction, you know, knowledge about Islam?
My father actually came from my father, you know, because around 15, 16, I started to get what some people in the African American community would say conscious. Started to want to learn about your history, started to respect those who, the pioneers that came before in the civil rights movement and things of that nature. So I started looking at documentaries about how African Americans struggled and how they fought for their rights, and the mainstays in that, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesse Jackson and all those who came before, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, all those. So I got very interested in that. So I told my father about it, and my father actually brought me the book for Malcolm X, the autobiography of Malcolm X. So he said, since you're interested in these kind of issues, you know, read up about Malcolm X. So I read that book, and that book really inspired me and got me interested in becoming a Muslim and learning about Islam. Because in my neighborhood, there were Muslims there, but the majority of the Muslims at that time started coming in. There were some Sunni Muslims around my age, and I still meet with them or see them occasionally.
Yeah.
That grew up with me in the neighborhood. But the Nation of Islam came in because of the drugs, and they wanted to clean up the drugs and make it a better place for the residents there. So I was going to go into the Nation of Islam. But after I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, that what made me say, well, there's a true Islam, because he went through the Nation of Islam and he left. And so that Islam that Malcolm X chose, that's what I said I need to learn more about. So after that, the movie came out, his autobiography, Spike Lee film. That just increased it even more. And so that's what got me interested into Islam.
So what was the next step after you read the biography, you watched the movie? What was, because right now what, you're 16, 17?
About 16, yeah.
So what was the next step then?
About a year and a half, I'm still interested, but I didn't accept Islam. I didn't really know what to do or how to do it. But one night I was watching this program, a television program. I guess you can buy, at that time you can buy your airtime. So the Imam from Masjid Muhammad in Washington, D.C., they had a program called Islamic Perspectives. So one, I think it was on, the public channel you can purchase. So they had a half an hour program, and so I just was randomly going through the channels, and I stopped on that, and the Imam was giving some introductory lessons about Islam and what Islam is about. And if you need any further information, you can come to the masjid, come to the mosque, and you can ask us any more questions that you need, and we're happily to tell you about it. So he gave the phone number. After every program, they would leave the phone address of the masjid, and they would leave the phone number of the masjid. So I took the address down, and I went there. They had, at that time, I think they still have it going on. On Sundays, they will have this lesson called Ta'aleem. So he said, well, if you want to know more, come to us on Sunday during this time at Ta'aleem. So I went there and spoke to some of the brothers there, and that's how I accepted Islam. That very same day that I went there and met the brothers there after the lesson, and that's how I accepted Islam.
Well, how did you feel? What was your feeling?
I was nervous. I was afraid because I didn't know exactly what I was getting into, but I knew the belief system of Islam. That's what made me want Islam. When I would read about it in the encyclopedia, it said, Islam believes in the oneness of Allah, the oneness of God, and it believes in the oneness of the message. So all of the messengers, were Muslims. And Muslims have to believe in all of the messengers in order to be a Muslim. And so that really made me feel that this is the truth, because all of the messengers that they mentioned, they were teaching the same thing, and they were saying the same thing: worship Allah alone and follow me as a messenger. So that's what made me really grasp Islam, as a creed, and then seeing after, and also I saw the Messenger, the movie The Messenger. The movie The Messenger. I know it was some controversy when it was first appeared in the late 70s, but I saw that. I saw a rerun of that, and I saw them making, tawaf around the Kaaba, and how everything was in unison, and that just really touched me to say that this is the life I want to live as a Muslim.
So how did your family react?
They were pretty good about it, We didn't grow up in a very religious household. We went to church every now and again. My mother was more than my father, but they supported me every step of the way, They took me to the mosque I didn't drive at that time. They even dropped me off there, on the weekend to continue that Ta'aleem class. So they were supportive. They were surprised that I accepted Islam. They were curious why I wanted to be a Muslim. But after they saw that I was this is what made me feel that I can be a better person, they were on board with it, yeah, even though they were Christian.
So what were some struggles you faced as someone, you're old and you're new at the same time? So
Yeah. So I'm 18, and the struggles were for me because youngsters at that time, not everybody is on that same level you're on. The youngsters, they're on a little lesser level. Like I mentioned before, they're into clothes, they're into music, they're into certain things that in Islam now is different. You can't participate in those things. So it was hard at that time for me to interact with my brothers or my old friends from the neighborhood, because now I changed and I'm not doing the same things, or I don't feel the same way and view the world as they're seeing. So it was hard for me in the beginning because I became more by myself, because I was not around my past friends, and my family and my younger brothers didn't really understand it at that time.
Yeah.
And so that was the struggle, just trying to stay firm, just trying to stay firm. In that first year, I went to Job Corps. Job Corps is a program that they have for kids who are youngsters who did not go through the natural way of finishing high school and going through high school. So they give them opportunity to get their GED and get a trade. So right after that, I accepted Islam. I went into that, and so it was difficult because I had to live in a dorm, and a bunch of young people who, were not trying to live what we say a righteous life. So that was a hard thing for me, to navigate through that, not. They were drinking, they were smoking, they were into, the girls, and on that campus, it's almost like a college campus. So as a young person trying to stay away from those things, it was a little strange, for them, and hard for me to make it through, But I made it through, and it was some Muslims that came through from different cities like Philadelphia, New York City. So I met other young Muslims like myself, and we stuck together, and it was a small group, but that helped, it helped a lot, yeah.
So was there anyone particularly from the Muslim community who helped you through this journey?
Many brothers at that time. They were so excited to see a young person, trying to strive and be upon this Islam. I had so many brothers in the Masjid Muhammad community to help me. One was Eugene Williams, one is Naeem Hussein, Naeem Hassan, Bilal, Prather, just many brothers. Many brothers helped me. They were all my mentors. I was 18, and all my friends were men, like in their 40s or older. So I had many mentors to help me and guide me and give me advice and direct me, So it was a beautiful experience, yeah.
How was your first Ramadan?
The first Ramadan was in that school that, what do you call it? It's called Job Corps in Southwest Washington. So that was maybe 3 months after I accepted Islam. So it went pretty good because it was in the winter time, so the days were shorter, and the school accommodated us, the little group of Muslims we had. It was about 5 to 10 of us, and they accommodated us to have our meals after the come to us, because they served dinner a little earlier. So they saved our meals for us, and they accommodated us and made it a little easy. Yeah, but by the end, like last week of Ramadan, it was harder. Getting not eating, it was just a little harder. But we got through it, and it was a blessing. Abstaining from that food and drink during those 30. I think it was 30 days, complete 30 days that time. Yeah.
From that moment on until 2000 when you went to Medina. In these, 5 years?
About 6 years, yeah.
So what motivated you to study Islam?
My mentor and almost like my father, Eugene Williams. And it was others, so many more, Yusuf Rushdan, and so many more. They really helped me and pushed me to to learn the religion. You know, they said, you're young now. For us, it's a little harder, but for you, your mind is fresh. So go learn, get the Arabic language, learn the Arabic language, memorize the Quran, study the religion. You know, they came through, many of them, the Nation of Islam, and they made that change over. And some of them didn't, but they still didn't have the opportunities like I had at that time in the late 90s coming up. It was more opportunities for Muslims to learn, more books to read, more opportunities to go overseas and study. So they pushed me a lot, you know, to take advantage of that opportunity. And so that's what I did. I went to UDC for a little bit, for about 2 years, a year and a half. And then I went to the Arabic Institute in Virginia, in Fairfax, Virginia. And they also guided me and said, just go there so you won't regret, you know. This is a good thing for it. We need it in our community. We need people to learn Arabic. We need people to study. So go there and see how it is, and it'll be a good, you know, experience for you. And so I did, and it was, you know, it really was. Yeah.
Did anyone help you to apply to Medina? How was the process back then? Because you know now it's online everything, right?
Yeah. There was easy for us who studied at the institute. It was easy because they would come here every year, and they would hold interviews there every year at the institute. So it was easy. So you just had to wait for them to come, and then you do your interview and wait for the result to see if you get accepted. And so I did that. Yeah. The first year I applied for Mecca, and I didn't get accepted. But the second time they came, I applied for Medina, and then alhamdulillah I got accepted in 2000. Yeah.
So now you are in Medina, you arrive in Medina. Now, given your background, you grew up in Washington. Now you are in Medina. It's a big culture change, right? People, language, environment. What were some of like the surprises you had along that way?
Okay, Medina was at that time it was less advanced. It was less it was behind. You know, I mean, living conditions, the dorms were very old. They were some of them didn't have air conditioner. But when I got there, they started renovating. You know, that first year they started renovating, and so I actually got one of the newer dorms, the renovated dorms. So that was good as far as that aspect of it. I got that a dorm with central air conditioner and 4 people in the room. So that part, it was fine, you know. The people and the environment, the most thing that was a culture shock was how they drove over there. I mean, it was very unorganized. It was very fast. People would cut you off. And so that was the most thing that I had to, the most of the culture that I had to adjust to was the driving. The heat was also a problem. The heat there is much hotter there than it is here. So it took me a little while to adjust to the heat. You know, I got nosebleeds from the heat, and so it took me a while. But after a while, I mean, a few weeks to a month, I was okay. You know, and as far as the people were very. Depends, you know. Not everybody is as we thought. You know, going there would be helpful or nice. So you find, of course, majority of them are helpful. The majority of them nice. But those who weren't also made an imprint on us and made us feel a certain way because we expected everyone to be welcoming, everyone to have that Islamic adab or manners to them, but it wasn't the case. So that was a culture shock to see that not all of them living over there were striving to be the best Muslims they can be. Yeah.
So before going to Medina, did you know anything about, like you studied in the Ma'had? What did you take with you that you applied over there?
Oh, the Ma'had helped me a lot because I got through the Ma'had. I got a chance to make Hajj. So I actually got a chance to see Medina, see Mecca, see the environment a little bit before I actually went there. The Ma'had prepared me with the language. You know, I stayed up about a year and a half in the Ma'had. So that helped me out with the language a lot. So I was advanced, more so than some of my colleagues that just came. So I didn't start from ground one, you know. So understanding and being able to understand the Arabic language was a little bit easier for me because I got that opportunity as a full-time student here in Virginia because they only taught, all of the lessons were in Arabic, you know. So that got my ears trained and got me trained to the Saudi accents because Arabs, they have different accents. So majority of our teachers were Saudi teachers. So it got me trained and put me in a better position to be able to succeed, you know. So that helped a lot. And advice from the teachers to be patient, you know, to persevere through the struggle of studying. So it helped me a whole lot. There's some who didn't have that before they went.
When you went into Medina, like most students, they go through the 2-year program for Arabic, learning Arabic, right?
Yes.
So after that, which faculty did you choose?
I chose the faculty of Hadith because my time there, I began to love the study of Hadith. I began to love the people of Hadith, you know, Ahlul Hadith, and listening to their biographies and how much they sacrificed to study, to, you know, travel from land to land to land just to get the Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The sacrifice they did for memorization, you know, I mean, you have so many so many stories of Bukhari, of Muslim, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. I mean, so many of those great scholars were scholars of Hadith, and how they valued learning the Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I chose to go to the faculty of Hadith.
Any particular Hadith that you love and is like it's your favorite go-to?
No, I don't have a particular Hadith. No, I don't. But I just love them in general.
Okay.
You know, just loved Hadith in general, and learning the fiqh of the Hadith, learning the narrators of the Hadith, and it just captured my imagination, and it helped me find I guess something that I loved in Islam that I can pursue and learn. You know.
So were there any classmates, peers, friends who helped you, like you stuck together with him? Like every time you see them, you will smile.
I didn't have a lot of friends like that, but there were definitely people that I made a good relationship with during those. I stayed there in the school for 6 years. So the group that I came with, we were about 11 that year, and so a good 6 to 7 of them became good friends to me during that time there. And a few of them now, maybe 3 or 4 of them, I still, from now and again, I have contact with them. Yeah, and those who didn't come in my group, some of them we got close to there, but not many of them, you know, I got very close to, you know. Mainly because of my personality. I'm more of a shy person, more reserved person, stay to myself a lot. So that was most of the reason why. Maybe on my part, you know, not being out and around them a lot. Yeah.
Were there any teachers or scholars who influenced you during your time?
Yeah, I mean, I loved sitting with Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad. He had a lesson every day. You know, every day in the Haram, he had a lesson after Maghrib. Many scholars, some have passed away now, like Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabri, rahimahullah, he passed away. Other scholars too, Ibrahim Ruhaili, I really benefited from him. Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr, the son of Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, I benefited from him. Those were the main ones that I really enjoyed, and sitting in their lessons. Yeah.
What were they teaching?
They were teaching mostly Hadith and Aqidah. Yeah, they were teaching mostly Hadith and Aqidah. Those were the subjects that I was the most interested in, Hadith and Aqidah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were these two your favorite subjects?
Yeah, those were my favorites. Yeah, fiqh, I enjoyed fiqh, but when we study fiqh from the way of the fuqaha, I didn't enjoy it as much as studying fiqh from the way of the muhaddithin. You know, extracting the fiqh from the hadith itself. You know, the sheikh, the scholar, reading the hadith, and giving us the fiqh that's inside of the hadith. But those were the two, hadith and aqidah, were the ones I enjoyed the most. And probably fiqh, I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't as much. Yeah. But even though that's the most after aqidah, fiqh is the most important one. You know, and you use hadith and the understanding of hadith to get you to the verdicts of fiqh. Yeah. So fiqh is very important. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned before that some of your mentors said to learn Arabic, memorize the Quran, and pursue knowledge, right? Did you feel that you achieved that?
I achieved it. Yes, I gained knowledge that I didn't have before. You know, I gained knowledge that I wouldn't have gotten if I didn't go. But I guess right at the time where I felt that I was really improving and making that next step, it was time for me to go. You know, it was time for me to go. I think that if I would have stayed longer, pursued a master's degree, or maybe even higher, I think, of course, I would have benefited much more. But right about that time when I'm really starting to grasp the concepts, grasp the understandings, the terminologies, where I can start research, where I can start understanding better, my time was over. Yeah, it's time for me to go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then by that time I got married, had a couple of kids, and it was a little harder, more strain financially, you know, to stay. I had to leave to do other things. Yeah.